Dear Santa, hey, how's it going? I know it's been a bit, ever since I didn't get that box of Special Booster 1.0 I asked for last year, but when I realized that no one could get it, I got less salty, so sorry for that. But this year, I'm asking for something even more impossible. And no, I'm not asking for the first anniversary Ghost Omni. I'm not that unrealistic. No. All I want for Christmas this year is... It's a functional RustTyranomon deck? Let's talk about it. Happy holidays, Tamers. Welcome back to The Other Decks. My name's Casual Dobo, and today, that's right, 'tis the season for RustTyranomon. Nicknamed Christmas RustTyranomon by some in the community, this red-green deck is a fan favorite among many players. And in fact, we tried to get it to work last year when the game kind of first came out. However, there were a couple problems with the deck that kind of made it hard to run. So first of all, RustTyranomon by himself is a 4 to Digivolve 11,000 DP Digimon, which, admittingly, kind of rough. And yeah, it does have the ability to attack into unsuspended Digimon, but it doesn't really matter unless you have Taiga, who gives it piercing. So already you are in need of 2 cards to get RustTyranomon to kind of just work the way you want it to work. Then there's the whole thing about 11,000 DP. There's so many Digimon nowadays, level 6 and above, that are 12,000 DP or higher. So if RustTyranomon swung into any of those in security, it's out of here. And then the last option is one that I think a lot of decks are facing right now, and that's security control. I'll just leave it at that. There's so many different kill options out in Digimon right now, and not even just Gaia Force like we were encountering last year, but Wyvern's Breath, Iron Fisted Onslaught. There's a whole lot out there. And so the deck that I've created here attempts to alleviate some of those issues while also making some of our processes run a little bit more smoothly, thanks to the inclusion of EX01 Classic Collection's new Tyranomon card. But yeah, as we go through deck profile, let me know in the comments below what cards you would add, what changes you would make. I would love to hear your thoughts on this deck. And if you're liking this content and other deck profiles I've made, please subscribe to the channel. Every little bit helps as we try and grow the channel and kind of grow this community that we're starting to build up. But yeah, with all of that out of the way, let's hop into the deck profile. And here we are. So, as with any deck profile we do on the channel, we're going to start off with the Digitama, aka our Digi-Eggs. So, starting us off, we do have 4 copies of Minomon. So this has the inheritable: when attacking an opponent's Digimon, this Digimon gets plus 1000 DP. So you'll see this sort of effect in a couple of other places, a couple of other cards we've included. And this is just really good because we are aiming to go into our opponent's Digimon, and so getting that DP boost is nice, especially if we can get piercing. And as you'll notice, with this and the other cards, it's not once per turn. That's right, we're going for the Dimension Scissor combo. And in order to pull that off, we do need 4 copies of Minomon. But we do have a 5th Digitama in Modimon. So while this Digimon is level 6 or higher, which RustTyranomon is, it gets plus 1000. Alright, so moving on to our rookies, I do have 2 copies of Kokuamon. And this has an amazing inheritable that says when this Digimon is level 6 or higher, it gains security attack plus 1. So being able to give our RustTyranomon security attack plus 1 is absolutely fantastic, especially if we have some of our other DP boosting cards in the chain. So we can swing in without having to really worry about, swinging into something that's too high of DP, where it will just destroy our RustTyranomon. but we only have 2 of it because it is a 1 cost to Digivolve rookie, which feels bad. 4 cost to play, which also feels bad. And there's some other rookies in here that I think we'd rather see, especially if we can get that Dimension Scissor combo going. Security attack might not be as necessary. Next up, we do have 2 copies of Agumon. This just gives, on your turn, this Digimon gets plus 1000 DP. Love ourselves a DP boost that has pretty much no requirements. Then going into our next one, do have 2 copies of Tyranomon. On all turns, your opponent can't gain memory except for tamer effects. This is just really good, especially in the current BT6, probably EX01 meta, just because of all the memory boost cards, blue shenanigans, yellow shenanigans, you name it. So this is just a great memory blocker to have, and kind of necessary, especially if your color has an option for it, right? Next up, do have 3 copies of Tentomon. This is from the starter deck, and it says on play, reveal top card of your deck, and if it's a green Digimon, add it to the hand, otherwise bot deck it. So this is nice because we're not always going to be able to Digivolve our rookies, and so having a rookie that has a on-play ability, especially one that can potentially give us a card that we need, because we are running a lot of green Digimon, this is just really good to have, especially as sort of like an early aggro strategy. And then rounding out the rookies, we do have 4 copies of Palmon from the starter deck as well. And so this is one of those cards that I was saying that, yeah, we made an inclusion of. So Palmon, when attacking, if you attack an opponent's Digimon, Digimon gets plus 2000 DP for the turn. And then once again, this is not a once per turn ability, so if we can get Dimension Scissor onto our RustTyranomon, and it keeps unsuspending and then attacking unsuspended Digimon, if your opponent has a wide board, game over. But yeah, we can get into some pretty crazy DP amounts if there's the right setup. Moving on over into our champions, do have 2 copies of Green Tyranomon from BT2. This says when Digivolving, reveal top 3, and then add a level 5 Digimon card and 1 green Tamer card from among them to your hand. And then place the rest in the bottom of your deck in any order. So this is good in case we don't have, Taiga in hand, if we don't have some of our other green Tamers in hand, and it also adds a level 5. So this is really good to have, especially in the Tyranomon deck. And plus, if we do have a Taiga, this thing does get piercing. So if your opponent is trying to rookie rush you, you can sort of counter with Tyranomon and then get a security, will most likely die, but you've kind of accomplished what you need that card to do. Next up, we do have 2 copies of Arbomon. So this is from BT6, and essentially it's just our standard hybrid Digimon, very similar to how Agunimon and Lobomon were in BT4. And the main reason I included 2 copies of this here is because, one, it can, similar to Agunimon and Lobomon, can act as a final swing and Digivolve on top of one of our green Tamers. And as much as we love Taiga, we only really need 1 Taiga out on the field at any time. So if for some reason, we get 2, maybe one was checked in security and comes onto the board, we have a Tamer that is fairly unnecessary for the main strat. So we can Digivolve him into Arbomon relatively for free. Moving on, we do have 2 copies of Kabuterimon from the starter deck. And this is the 1 to Digivolve blocker, essentially. And this is good just because, this is our only blocker in the deck. I didn't really think it was wholly necessary to have too many. And 1 to Digivolve just gives us a little bit more tempo. That way we can get into our ultimates a little bit faster. And then rounding out the champions, we do have 3 copies of EX01 Tyranomon. So this is awesome because it has the when Digivolving ability that if we don't have a Taiga in play, we can play one from our hand without the memory cost. So that's a cheaper Taiga, which is awesome. And then on our turn, this Digimon's also counted as green. So it can be Digivolved on top of by some of our other green ultimates. But the really awesome part about this is also, while this Digimon has Tyranomon in its name, it does get plus 2000 DP. And as I mentioned before, DP boosting for RustTyranomon is going to be incredibly important. Moving on to our ultimates, we do have 2 copies of Metal Tyranomon from BT2. This is a fairly cheap ultimate to Digivolve into, and plus if you have Taiga, that's a 1 cost Digivolve ultimate, which is fantastic. But also, the Inheritable says, when this Digimon deletes one of your opponent's level 6 or higher Digimon in battle, unsuspend this Digimon. So even if we don't necessarily have, Dimension Scissor in hand or don't have the memory to really pull off that combo, with the amount of DP boost we have in the chain potentially, we can swing over some of our opponent's level 6 or higher Digimon with RustTyranomon. And so this kind of gives it a pseudo Dimension Scissor element to it without needing to use the option card itself. Next up, I do have 3 copies of Lilamon. This has the main Digiburst 2 ability that we can suspend one of our opponent's Digimon. And I mostly included it here just because Taiga does give all of our Tyranomon piercing, and so you'll notice that there isn't as much control as you might expect from a green deck, and so I still wanted to keep some element of it here. So being able to Digiburst and then suspend an opponent's Digimon felt pretty good to me. And then rounding out the ultimates, we do have 3 copies of the starter deck Mega Copy Tyramon. And it says, on your turn, once per turn, when this Digimon deletes an opponent's Digimon in battle and survives, trash the top card of your opponent's security stack. So obviously I think we can all see a synergy here with RustTyranomon, that it can swing into something unsuspended, and just the act of deleting that Digimon will melt one of the security, which is awesome because, security control. But yeah, I mean, it's incredible that if you're able to, swing into your opponent's Digimon and then melt a option card from their security, I mean, that's just incredible. That's a feel-good moment right there. And that's not even considering the potential piercing and security attack +1 that we've kind of already gone over. Moving on over to our Megas, we are going into the boss monster for this deck, which is our RustTyranomon from BT2. So on our turn, if we have a green tamer in play, this Digimon can attack our opponent's unsuspended Digimon. And then also, when this Digimon deletes one of our opponent's Digimon in battle and survives, we can suspend one of our opponent's Digimon, which is awesome. So yeah, obviously the play here is have Taiga in play, give it piercing, and then yeah, if you're able to put Dimension Scissor on there, great. But this is just a really powerful ability that if we have the DP boost in play, we can pretty much eliminate any of our opponent's Digimon. But RustTyranomon is not our only level 6 here. We do have 2 copies of Ancient Troymon. So on our opponent's turn, when they attack, we can suspend up to 2 of their Digimon without blocker. And then on deletion, we can play 1 green level 4 or lower Digimon card with hybrid in its form from our hand without paying the memory cost. And so like I mentioned, this deck doesn't really have a whole lot of control elements in it. We're not running any of, the flower cannons, the needle sprays that typically you might see in some of these decks. But I do like this opponent's turn ability just because it can kind of hinder a lot of the faster meta decks and hinder their ability to swing multiple times. And so if we can slow down any of those decks, we're in a pretty good spot to kind of play against them. Now obviously there are a lot of other level 6s that you can kind of put in here, so I would love to hear your thoughts. I was playing around with Nidhogg, maybe even Puppetmon, but I wasn't really sure. So I kept with Ancient Troymon, but I think that's definitely a discussion spot that we can talk about in the comments. Moving on to our options, we do have 2 copies of Dimension Scissor, which says one of your Digimon gains the following effect when this Digimon deletes an opponent's Digimon in battle and survives unsuspended. So obviously this is great to get multiple hits if we have our RustTyranomon fully set up, and if we have the option to do this, and if we have the memory to do this. However, for anyone who's ever tried to run Dimension Scissor in a multi-hit like OTK style combo, it is admittingly very difficult to get it off the way you want it to. And that's why I originally had it at 3, but I moved it down to 2 just because we are a little bit option heavy here. Next up, for our options, we do have Hidden Potential Discovered, which is just a classic card that says that next time one of your green Digimon digivolves this turn, you can suspend one of your Digimon to reduce the memory cost of the Digivolution by 5. So the fact that this is 0 cost is absolutely wild, and pretty much can get us into our RustTyranomon for free if we have the setup, which then clears up a lot of the memory for us to, potentially Dimension Scissor or do other things, which is awesome. So yeah, Hidden Potential Discovered, absolutely fantastic, incredible card. Next up, we do have 2 copies of Green Memory Boost, which came in the new starter decks that just came out back in December. But this one is a 3 cost to play. Main, reveal the top 4 cards of your deck, add 1 green Digimon from them to your hand, and then bot deck the rest of them. And then you put this out into the area. and then it does have delay. So on your next turn or the subsequent turns, you can trash this to gain 2 memory. And so obviously it just kind of helps facilitate a lot of our big combo plays that we want to do, especially if we already have our memory tamer out. It gets us to 3. If we can get to 5, we can do a lot of pretty cool things based on the options and the Digimon we have in this deck. Next up on our options, we do have 2 copies of A Delicate Plan. But like I mentioned in the deck intro, one of the things that you're probably going to encounter besides high-powered Digimon is security control, or just kill options in your opponent's security. So Gaia Force, Wyvern's Breath, Iron Fisted Onslaught. We're teching in 2 copies of this just so that we can sort of prevent our RustTyranomon from swinging into those and, you know, dying on the spot. And because we do have that red Tyranomon from EX01, it does make teching in A Delicate Plan just a little bit more viable, but we do have a red tamer that we'll discuss later that kind of helps that as well. And then lastly, for our options, I included 1 copy of Win Rate 60%. So if we have any tamer in play, we can use this option without needing a white tamer, which is awesome. Its main ability is the next time one of your Digimon digivolves this turn, you can trash a Digimon card in your hand that's the same color as a digivolving Digimon, and reduce that Digivolution by 4. I know that was a lot of Digimon words, but essentially, for the most part, if we have a green Digimon that's digivolving this turn, we can trash a green Digimon from our hand to trash, and then whatever it's digivolving into has reduced Digivolution by 4, which is perfect because RustTyranomon's Digivolution cost is 4 inherently. And this is also why I found the green memory boost to be a little bit more important, because if we're set to 3, you know, trash green memory boost, get to 5, play Win Rate 60%, digivolve into our RustTyranomon, and then we still have 3 memory to work with in order to use Dimension Scissor. Now, I know that's a lot of things coming together in just the right ways, but if you have the ability to do so, you know, go ahead and do it. Moving on to our tamers, we do have 2 copies of Mimi, and this is our memory Mimi. So if we have 2 or less memory, it sets us to 3. And then if we have a level 5 or higher Digimon in play, we can suspend it to, you know, hatch a Digi-Egg in the nursery or pull it out of the nursery and then onto the battle area. So it just allows us to get through our eggs a little bit quicker and do a little bit more digivolving. Which is also why, you know, for a deck this like tight, we'd still have about 13 rookies, just because I suspect we're going to see Mimi's ability kind of active a lot. Moving on to our main tamer that we're trying to find, we have 3 copies of Taiga. So on our turn, all of our Digimon with Tyranomon in their name gets piercing. And then if we digivolve a Digimon into something with Tyranomon in its name, we do get to suspend a tamer to reduce the Digivolution cost by 1. So your RustTyranomon becomes a 3 cost to digivolve. Metal Tyranomon becomes a 1 cost, which is wild. And yeah, like I said before, RustTyranomon really relies on Taiga being on the field. So, you know, if you wanted to use it as a 4-of, perfectly fine. And then rounding out the entire deck profile, we do have 2 copies of starter deck Tai Kamiya. And then this says on our turn, all of our Digimon get plus 1000 DP for the turn. So once again, kind of solves that DP boosting problem for RustTyranomon. It automatically puts it to 12,000 DP, and then also gives us the ability to run A Delicate Plan without needing, you know, our red Tyranomon out on the field and just being alone. But yeah, there you have it. That is the deck profile. So like I said, there's a couple of different things that I think you can change out here. I think one flexible spot is definitely this Ancient Troymon over here. Just because there's a couple of different megas that you can put in there. Nidhoggmon, Puppetmon. If you wanted Palmon's ability, but you know, are afraid that maybe you don't get that right stack, you can maybe throw in some Togemon from the same starter deck, which does the exact same thing, and replacing some of our champions here. I would say that a viable candidate, and this hurts because it's a Tyranomon, but this when digivolving Tyranomon is a little meh, to be honest. So maybe putting in starter Togemon here, not a bad play. But let me know what you think down below in the comments. What do you think about this deck? What tier list would you put this at currently? And how would you change it to make this better? think there's a lot of people out there that want to make RustTyranomon viable and work, and so I'm hoping that this deck profile can contribute to that a little bit, contribute to that project, and hopefully get RustTyranomon in a spot where we can see him winning some tournaments. But yeah, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like down below and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. We're making some spicy decks, we're making some meta decks, kind of covering a whole range of the Digimon card game. Thank you again for watching, and until next time, I'll catch you later.